Between the hills, the stars, the sky, the river so clear, river so clear.
Our opening words this morning are from the Reverend David Breeden. Welcome to the new story. Welcome to a day unwritten. We gather to speak of possibility. We remember the losses. We celebrate the victories. We embrace the possible over the probable. Weaving a story of hope. Join us in the new story. Join us in the day unwritten. Join us in the future of possibility. Today we are joined by Ross Keyes of the Interfaith Alliance of North Dakota. Ross worked in the federal government for almost 30 years, holding positions with Congressman Earl Pomeroy and Senators Heidi Heitkamp and Kent Conrad, including State Director, Deputy State Director, Outreach Director, and Mobile Office Coordinator. He has crisscrossed the state with each and had the opportunity to help North Dakotans on a number of issues. More recently, Ross helped develop and was the Executive Director of the North Dakota Voices Network, and is now working to build Interfaith Alliance of North Dakota. Our congregation is a member of the Alliance. Today he will be talking with us about Interfaith Alliance, some key issues at the North Dakota Legislative Assembly, which began this week, and ways to be involved in this session. Please welcome Ross Keyes.
Okay, well, thanks for the intro and thanks for the invite, Don. I appreciate it. As I said, I'm Ross Keyes. Been here a number of times. Really enjoy what you guys do and what you're about. Not a member, not a UU, but I'm probably pretty close. I was raised Catholic for many years, and then finally in 2010, when the bishops came out against the ACA, I said, well, that's enough for me, kind of, because we knew we were going to lose our jobs when the ACA was passed with Congressman Pomeroy. And I said at that point, and had been building to this, I'm a hopeful agnostic, so we're probably pretty close. Anyway, when I was putting this together, Don and I had talked, and there's like several different parts of it, and I tried to puzzle it together. We'll see if I did. I may not have puzzled it together very well, so it might be a little jumbled, but we'll just kind of get through it. And I'm talking about the legislature here, and I see faces in here who know more about the legislature than I do. Like, it's not even close. And so this is a room full of pros. So if there are comments you want to make or questions or things you can highlight as I'm talking, feel free to just jump in. I mean, I see Aaron over there who works on budget and probably proposal issues in state water, and Marnie with AARP, and Christine back there who battled on book bans. So, you all have a lot of great expertise here. Anyway, before I started, I asked Don if I could briefly explain what the Interfaith Alliance of North Dakota is, because some of you may not be very familiar with it. The Interfaith Alliance of North Dakota is a 501c3 and one of about 15 affiliates with the National Interfaith Alliance in Washington, D.C. There are affiliates in California, Florida, Pennsylvania, Colorado, Iowa, and other places around the country. In North Dakota, we currently stand at about 150 lay and ordained faith leaders across the state. And the goal has been getting us to all to work together to challenge intolerance and extremism through education and advocacy, bringing about greater social, economic, and environmental justice in North Dakota. Backbone for the national office, by the way, is freedom of religion and pushing back against Christian nationalism. We are very supportive of those positions as well, and then they give us leeway to get involved in local issues that we think are important. Just a little bit more so you understand how we work. When Senator Heitkamp lost her 2018 race, she became the anchor investor in something called the North Dakota Voices Network that you mentioned. And that was created to bring progressive organizations together to share ideas, best practices, amplify each other's message and share events. You know, like, hey, we got this we're going to be demonstrating down by the hospital for nurses' rights. Can you join us? And we'd share that among the organizations around the state. We also provided free counsel to North Dakota Women's Network. They're defunct now. AFL-CIO, Human Rights Coalition, Community Action, and dozens of others, along with such things as press releases, media lists, just a whole gamut of things that help them get their message out to the public. And since you never really stop working for someone like Heidi, as Megan can attest, Heidi informed me that I was going to be the one to help pull that effort together. So I helped, and it worked. During the last session, one legislative leader was said to have told an organizational leader in town, please call off the dogs, because they were getting hundreds of emails and calls on one of the action items that we had been promoting. So if you've got those folks saying, hey, we heard you, that something's working, it may not cause them to vote the right way, but they're hearing our voice. But at the same time, when Heidi and I were starting that effort out, the Voices, I said to her, you know, I really think I'd like to try something on the side, which would be pulling together forward-thinking faith leaders across the state in kind of a very similar situation as the Voices Network. Progressive organizations working together, learning about each other. Some of them would be here one year, gone the next, and they might not know that they exist or where they're at in the state or who to talk to. And I found that the same is kind of been occurring with faith leaders. When I talk to the folks in Rugby, they have no idea that there's someone down in Valley City who wants to push the exact same things that they're doing. They had never heard of Ministry on the Margins over in Fargo. No idea what Sister Kathleen is doing here with Ministry on the Margins. So I thought it would be, seeing what had happened in North Dakota over the past 30 years, I thought it'd be great to pull together faith leaders because the state has taken a dark turn. I think we can all agree on. And if you have if the political side of things is weak, progressive organizations are doing what they can, who else can you bring into the mix? And it seems that, you know, one of the most trusted voices in the community are faith leaders. And so that was this effort. I started meeting with people like Gretchen Deeg, you guys know her, Karen Van Fossen, who used to be here, Joe Larson, Sister Kathleen, Barry Nelson, Marie Sagsby, and many others, and then I started traveling the state to pull people in and tell them what I was trying to do. And I know it's been done a variety of times. There's a local one that gets together with potlucks, sometimes do a coat drive to Stanier Rock, but this is a long-term effort statewide to get people to work with each other and then bring what they learn into their faith communities. So we've been mirroring what we did in Voices. We give them a safe space. We provide monthly briefings via Zoom, or briefings or conversations. We've had Churches for Middle East Peace on and talk about Gaza, environmental issues by DRC. Don, I'm not going to forget DRC during this conversation. North Dakota United has talked about the importance of public education. We've even had the International Center for Religion and Diplomacy out of DC, who normally they deal with international crises around the globe. We had them in on one of our Zooms for a de-escalation training. Try and get pastors involved as poll chaplains in North Dakota. It was just a very small first step, but something that I hope that we can build upon. And we also want to provide faith leaders opportunities to participate in current affairs. You'll see when I pass, I've got a handout today, you'll see a letter to the editor in 2023 during the session that was signed by about 70 faith leaders condemning the LGBTQ legislation that had been introduced during the session. You may have also seen Concordia College about 10 months ago had Heidi Heitkamp and Ed Schaefer talking about how do we bridge the divide between us. We had 200 plus in the room that night, and that was Interfaith that pulled that together. The goal, by the way, is to change hearts and minds in red states like this. help good people, and you all know them, help good people be the good people that they really are. They've been played by folks who don't have their best interests, and that's what this effort's really about. So there, background on Interfaith Alliance of North Dakota. Now let's jump into the session. I've got this divided into a couple pieces. One is some tips and some guidelines on when you're working with the session. And then we'll go through some bills. I've just got a handful that I thought I'd point out to you. Some of you in this room, Alan isn't here. I thought he'd be here. He's online? Okay. I got some of these from Alan. But we'll just go through this quick. So first, involvement. What are some things to keep in mind in involvement? Because the next 3.5, 4 months are going to go fast, and it's going to be like a fire hose. First, set your priorities. What are they? You might find that you're spreading yourself too thin. You've got 50 bills you want to follow. And by the time you're done monitoring all those bills, the session's gone by and you haven't done a thing. And I know people that's happened to. So what are your priorities? What couple of bills do you really want to focus in on where you think you can make a difference? How do you want to be involved? Do you just want to monitor? Just kind of learn about all the systems and the ways to get involved in a session. So figure out a game plan. Have you ever submitted testimony? Is that something you want to consider doing? There are some great briefers online. League of Women Voters has a great step-by-step on how to testify. And I've got a list of a lot of these that we can, photocopy or people can write down, or we can get to you after this. Maybe it's just contacting your legislator on a bill. I will steer you to a place that makes that pretty darn easy. You pretty just much have to press a button and the message goes to your legislator that says, hey, I don't support school vouchers. It can be made super easy. So how do you want to interact with the legislature? And then, of course, you can always go public besides giving testimony, but you can do a letter to the editor, and we'll talk about that toward the end of this. Keep your head in the game. Be careful about getting too high or too low. Burnout's a big deal. I know someone who went in 100 miles an hour during one session, and that was the last session they ever got involved with. It was because there's going to be a lot of painful things that get passed here, and it can have a real downer effect on folks that work the legislative session. Be informed. Know your subject. Do some research. Where can you get this information? Organizational websites in the state are a treasure trove of information. And we've got a really good list that I can point you to on a lot of the most active organizations across North Dakota. We also have bill trackers available. You can follow your own piece of legislation that you're interested in. Once school vouchers is on, if that's what you want to follow, you'll be able to follow that step by step and know what's happening. Another way to be informed is news coverage, and I'm going to shamelessly plug a couple of organizations. The North Dakota Monitor has been fantastic. Sign up for the North Dakota Monitor. You'll get some really good, fair coverage of some of the most important legislation that's going to be looked at this session. I also like the North Dakota News Cooperative, but they don't deal like that, but they may have a background piece on childcare that gets you up to speed so you know the different angles. They do more in-depth work, but that can be very complementary to what you read elsewhere. And then there's I don't know that you see much here, but there's a public news service in the Valley that's pretty good. A guy named Mike Moen, Public News Service. Prairie Action North Dakota uses that a lot to get stories out. So does AARP. You use them? Okay, thanks. So set a game plan, all right? Instead of just kind of, if you want to get involved, know how you want to do it. Otherwise, pretty soon, the way these sessions go, it'll be the end of April, and you'll go, I didn't get a chance to do anything because there's so much stuff going on. Then put it into action. Connect with your lawmakers. call, write, maybe try to visit in person. And that's pretty hard. And there's some of them that don't. They're not going to give you the time of day. But there are some that really do value, especially in-face interaction. And if they don't have time to meet with you over coffee, find out where they're at. Are they at a committee hearing? Are they doing a public hearing to talk about legislation? Are they at something else that's in town? I don't know how often I've run across Dick Dever at something, and he will always visit with you. He will always visit with you. And I'll tell you what, some of the relationships that developed over in the last session in 2023 changed some minds because of that sort of outreach. They changed some minds. So consider attending in-person events, public meetings, and even if you're at a public meeting, you see Dick Dever there and you've never met him before and you don't know what to do, and you weren't able to set up something, go over and go, hey, I liked your vote on this. Find a way, don't go over and, God, you're a moron. Why did you do that? Don't try that angle. It's not going to work. But he's probably got something that he's worked on that you appreciate. Back when we had the flood here, every single meeting they held in the city, there were 2 elected officials there. I represented one. I was there, and Dick Dever was there. Letters to the editor we've talked about. Social media is something that has exploded. And in fact, social media kind of gives third-party verification, something that TVs and newspapers we used to count on, but now kind of has gotten a life of its own. And if you promote a letter to the editor that you wrote or that someone else wrote, and it gets on social media and spreads, it's almost as if it were the newspaper article that we used to, kill for back in the 80s. Dina Butcher's op-ed. I have never seen anything take off on social media like Dina Butcher's op-ed did on the High Plains Reader. It had 500 plus shares, and that was just from that site. So some of these things, you go, well, no one's going to read the paper for letters to the editor. That's wrong, by the way. Elected officials do. I was in the world for 30 years. They look at that immediately. They do. But you can also really use this on social media to expand it beyond the newspaper that folks don't necessarily thumb through every day. Talk with friends, attend meetings. There's a meeting tomorrow night, 6:30 at the Kennedy Foundation. And Zach Ista and Kathy Hogan are going to be talking about legislation that they know of in the session, and they'll be talking about how you can interact with your legislators. Gather information in toolkits. And I'll have some of this again on a list if folks want to look at these, but the ACLU has a fantastic toolkit on how to work with people. I share toolkits with my Interfaith Alliance people across the state on Christian nationalism, Project 2025, what to be aware of and how to counter that. So some organizations I've mentioned, ACLU, League of Women Voters. By the way, ELCA just did a training on how to interact with the legislature on the 6th. That was the Western Synod. Another one is being held on the 21st with the Eastern Synod. We're all invited. They invited anyone that's involved with Interfaith Alliance of North Dakota to participate in those trainings. Again, something that, we could do a little wrap up, and here's the key things that if you want to get them out to your people. Another person who's got some great updates on queer youth in North Dakota and those bills, Faye Seidler. If you haven't connected with her, you have to connect with her. She also has a great list. She's the one I mentioned. She's got a great list of the organizations that you can reach out to, because they would love to hear from you. If you're concerned about school vouchers, North Dakota United would really, truly love to hear from you. They're always looking for someone to help them get it on social media, maybe write a letter to the editor, but reach out to these organizations. And then Prairie News, Prairie Action North Dakota Institute, daily news clips, action opportunities. Those action opportunities I pick and choose and send them out to my Interfaith Alliance because they will be good ones. They helped pass Our action item helped pass the teaching Native American history in classes in North Dakota. We wrote that action item and got it around the state. And Nicole Donaghy was really, really appreciative. And they're restarting Solidarity Saturdays. Y'all familiar with Solidarity Saturdays? It's where people across the state can get together on Zoom and get the latest update at the legislature, latest update on issues. It's a back and forth, normally terrific response from that. It's now going to be called Amplify North Dakota. But that starts on January 18th. Prairie Action North Dakota website will lead you right there. So, okay, shift quick. I'll just go through this quickly on some of the pieces of legislation that we're seeing. This is really early. We don't have a lot of stuff yet, but this will give you an idea of what's going on out there and what some organizations think is important to follow. First, there's going to be focused attacks on the LGBTQ community. HB 1144, bathroom bill, aimed at the trans community. HB 1181, gender usage in the state constitution. Want to do away with any reference to anything other than he, him, she, her, for the most part. That's 1181. Something I'm going to be involved with throughout this is Christian nationalism, and our national organization is probably going to be advertising it as well and getting me tools and language that I can share with people in the state. That's next on my list. Yep. And in fact, the attacks on the LGBTQ community fall under Christian nationalism as well, because they want to make everyone live according to this very narrow definition. So a lot of things fall under that. It's not all, hey, here's our Christian nationalism bills. It's not how it works. It's going to be boom, 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 but it all adds up to one thing. Christian nationalism, HB 1145, 10 Commandments required in all state-funded school classrooms. Well, you know, I was thinking, wouldn't it be good to have a bill submitted that says, okay, but then you've also got to take these passages from Deuteronomy, you know, and they're not going to want those anywhere close to a school classroom. Another one under Christian nationalism, HR 5001, urges the United States Supreme Court to restore the definition of marriage to a union between one man and one woman. By the way, I you know, going just a little bit further there, and I think I have this later, but I'll mention it now. Project 2025. Y'all familiar with Project 2025? Yeah. Okay. In that, it is said that in essentially every piece of federal legislation, plan, rule, you name it, that anything involving DEI is going to be stricken. So it's very thorough. These plans are very thorough. They've been on, and we've seen efforts of this in platforms at state conventions in North Dakota for the past 3, 4, 5 conventions. So this is something that's been shared between states, building up. Last time was a kind of an unplanned run. And now it's when folks are getting things together to hit states and federal on what is known as Project 2025. The big one here for me, and I think for a lot, is going to be school vouchers. I just touched base late last night with North Dakota United. No information on it yet. We're expecting it. It passed, but was vetoed last time. And you'll see a copy of a letter to the editor as an example that I'll share with all of you. But it's part of a national effort to undermine public education, eliminate the Department of Education, end Head Start, and expand private and parochial schools. So and it starts out, hey, we're only going to take this and it's going to come from this fund. It's not going to impact education funding. That's what was used last time. But in every state that this is passed, more and more money is taken from public education until it just balloons out of control. And we have the data for that to prove it in other states where this has happened. So not only is the product really scary, takes away a separation of church and state, but it also is a huge financial burden on states that implement this. By the way, in those schools, if you have a child who needs an IEP, forget it. They don't have to implement that. Marginalized community, they don't have to accept them. So they simply don't follow by the same rule book. Healthcare costs. HB 1114 would expand the cap on out-of-pocket expenses for insulin and related medical supplies. Marnie, I know your group is monitoring that one closely. Women's health and reproductive rights. I haven't seen this specific legislation, but Representative Carla Rose Hansen is planning on introducing legislation to protect infertility health care and contraceptives. Property taxes. This will take a lot of the yard out of the room. Governor Armstrong's outline said to be similar to what Merrill Pepcorn had discussed on his campaign. Tim Mathern has looked at it and says that it's pretty interesting. Has anyone heard anything different that I should note here? But so far, I've heard positive reviews on what Armstrong is outlining. Now, he doesn't pass this bill though, and it'll probably go through countless iterations. So the key is going to be following, does it maintain as much progressiveness as possible, or does it become regressive and hurt the poor and the elderly? One thing, by the way, with Governor Armstrong, new governor, we don't know what it's going to be like. I'd like you to keep an eye on behavioral health funding. It's an area where he might be interested in supporting. It's what his grandmother was famous for. Everyone. Yeah.
So he has a sensitivity to that issue.
Exactly. So when we were meeting with Health and Human Services, they said that they went through all their money in that budget out of the last session, and I think they're going to swing for the fences. And so I've been telling organizations to get some letters in line to help them when they swing for the fences, because this could help cement that Armstrong legacy on behavioral health. So I think there's an opportunity that we have there. Then there are some reactionary. HB 1089, thank you, Alan, for this one. Rejects any international climate agreements being enforceable in North Dakota. I printed that bill off and highlighted a couple things. If you want to see it, take a look, because it's essentially, well, we're not going to implement anything that the United Nations does. Well, we don't. But they go a little further and they say, so it's not only climate, but it's healthcare. They go, well, and if our federal government does something that they do, if the federal government, if Congress says, here's a bill, and it's similar to what United Nations came out with, this bill says, well, we're not going to follow that either. Dakota Resource Council, again, Don, sorry, but opposing further efforts to weaken the anti-corporate farming law. If I didn't do this, I'd get kicked out. Protect and strengthen local control, and I really like this one here, though. Protect and strengthen local control for townships and counties to give local authorities more control over projects like concentrated animal feeding operations, pipelines, crypto mines, and data centers. Badlands Conservation Alliance is another organization I'm sure many of you are familiar with. They're going to be monitoring, advocating for the removal of the artificial cap on the Outdoor Heritage Fund, game and fish budget, and some other things. But those are some of the key types of legislation that we'll be looking at. This is early. There's going to be a ton more dropped very soon. I've got a list of some of the organizations that provide tracking or toolkits on how to do all of this, and we can make this available. Like I said, Faith Seidler has a great full list. I had one too, but I let it get a little old. Find the organization that's working on your project, connect with them. And then they'll be able to tell you, here's what's happening, here's what we're hearing on the ground. North Dakota Human Rights Coalition has again signed Christina Sambor. You folks know her. It was textbook. It was seriously, in 2023, we got a lot of bad bills passed. But the work of Christina, Tracy Potter was working for Human Rights Campaign, and the Progressive Organization, I had never seen something that well oiled in 30 years. And hopefully we can recreate that. She was in where the conversations were being had. We lost on some bills, but we were able to mitigate damage in other bills and kill other bills altogether. I thought it was just a really tremendous effort in 2023, and I look forward to Human Rights Coalition doing that again. And then some examples of letters to the editor on what to do that works and what doesn't work. The top letter that you'll see the list. Does your letter have a purpose? Make sure the readers can easily understand what it is. Is your letter interesting? Is it informative? Get to the point. Focus. Focus. Would you want to read your own letter? Don't just write it and send it in. Write it. Read it a couple times, and sometimes I've looked at myself and I said, good God, I can't believe I wrote that thing. No rumors, no hearsay. Okay? Let others do that. I have a list of all the editors in the state, all the papers, all the way that you can submit these. Sometimes it's forms. The Trib has a form. Beulah Hazen, it works better if you use their form, we've found out. I've got who to contact if you don't see it played. Here's a name and phone you can call and go, hey, I thought it was a good letter. Why aren't you playing it? A lot of this is basic stuff. 1 per month. Tribby's been doing 2 per month. Minot is doing just locals these days. So if you see that first letter that I've got, faith leaders condemn bills that target LGBTQ plus people, that was us. That was Interfaith Alliance of North Dakota. It's the first time I think that we got about 70 progressive faith leaders on a letter to the editor in North Dakota. So it was a pretty big deal. And I couldn't get them. They were coming so fast I had trouble putting the letter together because I was constantly adding names. And there were more that wanted to sign it but didn't get it in. But you'll see on this, for example, this one is in the Jamestown Sun. I got it printed there because I put Reverend Marty Tepke Floyd and his wife Tammy Tepke Floyd at the top of the signature list. They're Jamestown. Did the same thing for Minot. Otherwise, Minot won't print it. So if you've got a letter signed by multiple people, use the folks in that community to get it printed there. Dickinson isn't printing much. We've actually got a friend up in Williston, James Falcon. So some opportunities in Williston. And then Dina's letter came a little bit late, so the form didn't print it. But High Plains Reader, Valley City Times Record, Devil's Lake Journal did. She's a great editor up there. And Tony Bender. And that's a loss. So the first 3 letters, you'll see the second one is from Dean Meyer. Dean has a talent. If you know Dean Meyer, he's got, yes, former legislator, also had a column in papers for years. Guys just got away with words. He sent this around the state, got picked up. Again, I think it got picked up in an article. Tony turned it into an article. The other one is how you do it if it's short and sweet and you want to say, hey, way to go on this legislation. Nice job. Want to give kudos to someone who's working their tail off and normally doesn't get recognized? This one by Nikki Berg-Buren in Grand Forks is a great example of to the point, gets her message across, and does some good with it. The final one, I didn't leave the name on it because this is pretty much what you don't want to do. All right. first, you want to make sure your spelling's good. And you don't want to say something like, we the people have kicked you left-wing socialist Democrats butts and elected Trump. That, it works with a small crowd, but don't take that type of anger on, that type of positioning. You want to educate, inform, and help people understand. And then he ends it with Merry Christmas to all and to all a good night after trashing someone for 5 paragraphs. Doesn't work. So those are the nuts and bolts. That's what Interfaith Alliance is about. It's some of the legislation. It's how you can approach a session successfully, because you do want to be successful if you want to get involved. And then finally, these letters to the editor. And I was in a meeting with the International Center for Religion and Diplomacy. They came out for the Heidi Heitkamp and Ed Schaefer thing, and he made a presentation there. And this, I've been carrying this with me ever since in my head. Curious, not furious. How do you change hearts and minds? It's not going to be with fury. It's not going to be by bashing people. It's not going to be saying, I'm never going to talk to them. And sometimes you have to do that for your own mental health. But we've got relatives. We've got friends, good people. They give you the shirt off their back. You all know them. But they've been voting in ways that hurt people. And if they understood that, I think we could get through to them. So curious, talk to them, find out, well, what about this do you support? Or why are you so mad about this? Curious, not furious. If I could leave something, it'd be that today.
So since you've been in this field for so long, I'm kind of curious on a personal level for those of us who've been more on the outskirts of doing things politically or being out trying to make a difference. How do you guard your heart for that work to be done? Because what I find in talking to people, because I've been curious, that there seems to be 2 camps. One camp is saying, I can do something, they're involved, there are other, and I just spoke to a transgender in our community, and the concept, they're so overwhelmed with the concept of what is happening. There's a feeling of victimhood and unable to do something. So your words on that personally.
Sometimes the pain is too deep to be able to continually engage. And I know some of the same folks, and they went all out and really got hurt and stepped back. And sometimes you have to do that. A lot of it is an individual person's makeup, or it might be their support system that makes a difference. So if you have the opportunity, find people that can help make you stronger, that go, hey, here's what we do to get our messages across, something that resonates with you. Because there's, like you said, there's different camps out there, and some of them are just they'd listen to this and they'd go, well, there's no way in hell I would ever even try to do this. And it's hard when you've got legislation that tries to deny you as a person. How do you cross that bridge? And I don't know in a lot of cases, but I know that getting to know some of these people has indeed made a difference in their votes here in Bismarck. So it takes a lot. You've got to know when to back off for mental health. You've got to have a good support system. For me, I was just in a conversation with Barry Nelson about this exact same thing, because it's been bothering me since the election. You know, I'll see something on Daily Kos or Raw Story or something that says, you know, here's the latest that so-and-so said. And a lot of 4-letter words, you know, jump into my mind. And I go, how can you be so blind? And then I take a breath and I go, okay, here's the people that I want to help. And they're good people. Truly. There's a couple. We needed help on a project at our house. They came over, had some beer, helped us with the project. They would do it again in a heartbeat. Support Social Security, Medicare, all sorts of great things. Photos of those things on their on their Facebook about supporting Social Security, about, hey, we need to get together for Medicare, and then a picture of them at the Trump flotilla. Good people, we need to help them, understand what's going on. That's why the curious gets in, because if you just start making statements, you'll get shut down. They'll block you out because, look, 30 plus years of hate, lies, fear, it works. This last election, over $200 million was spent on anti-trans ads. Look, fear is easy to sell. It's understanding compassion and really trying to help someone. That's the hard part.
I just want to talk a little bit about testimony, because we were in the room this week on the insulin cap. So there's a bill that made insulin, I think you can't spend $25 or $35 a month. And they experiment basically with the North Dakota retired people. So they like, does this work? What happens? It's a good case study. So that was in 2023, and now we're trying to expand it across. So we were in the committee room. AARP was ready with testimony, but there were 3 women there, a mother and daughter, and then another woman, all of who have diabetes, a 16-year-old girl, and she got up and spoke. And basically we ceded our time because those personal stories, the 16-year-old girl who got up, and she talked about how, since she's been 7 years old, she's had to check her, her blood level, her insulin levels every, many times a day, and her fear of when she goes off her parents' insurance, how that's going to affect her future. And, the legislature is all about the workforce. Well, she's like, I'll have to choose my job based on the insurance coverage available to me because of my chronic disease. And so that kind of conversation, and then her, living with it and what she wants to do. What followed was the chair of the committee, who's a good chair. Austin Shower's a good chair. He is really interesting as a chair.
He said some good. He was on TV the other day. I was impressed.
Yeah. Anyway, he said, okay, it's time for the opposition. Who dares follow that? And then Blue Cross Blue Shield got up, of course. But I say that because it was very amiable. She told, she had a very personal story. And I think even if you have friends who can't because they're protecting themselves, to carry a personal story forward in a concise, because that is really important. These people the legislators are overwhelmed by the number of bills. They have so much to do. So you have to hit it hard, concise, and that emotional pull makes a big difference. And you can submit that testimony and not stand up and give it. You can submit it. And so there's other ways to do it. So that's important. But I would encourage anyone just to go sit in some committee meetings just to get a feel for it, because I think that really normalizes it. It makes it less scary.
Can I jump on that quick before Dawn? We had someone do the same thing on school lunch shaming 2 years ago, and she knocked it out of the park. And I was remiss. I'm sorry. There's there will be legislation, I don't believe it's dropped yet, on universal school lunch. That's coming up. And the organization is togetherforschoolmeals.org. I've got that on this list. They have a website, and you can sign on. If the UU wanted to sign on as a church, you can sign on in support of that concept, and they lay it out. And there are some other churches we're trying to get Interfaith Alliance of North Dakota to sign on. But School Meals for All in North Dakota is a major push. We got a lot of headway last time. So if you're interested in school meals for our kids, here's an opportunity to get involved.
I just wanted to let people know that I'm thinking about at this point, testifying against 1145, the requiring the 10 Commandments to be on the walls of every single publicly funded classroom, including higher education in the state. So if anybody has any ideas of what you think good points that we should make, just let me know. But I thought I would let people know that's there, and it's at 10 a.m. in the House Judiciary Committee room. Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, the 14th.
And check out the other testimonies. If you're thinking of doing this and you don't know where to start or how to construct it, go to the testimony link. There are some great testimonies. On the book banning, there was some great stuff that I used. So look at that. The goal, here, besides changing hearts and minds, is to create an environment within which someone like Dick Dever can vote. in a certain way, because enough of us have expressed our interest that we've created an environment in Bismarck that he can do this, or we create an environment within which someone who's interested in running for office says, geez, I think things have turned enough to where I can do this. Or you create an environment where Earl Pomeroy says, you know what, I can talk about climate change. He was the first one in North Dakota of the elected officials to talk about climate change at the statewide conference. Took a lot to get there, but we do our best to create that positive environment for what we want to see happen in government.
Okay. We'll now extinguish our chalice. Our closing words are, may we have the courage to speak or write the stories within us that need to be told, the stories that make our lives. May we listen with a loving mind and a heart to the stories of others, lives, others here in this fellowship, and others in our wider community and world. Let us choose with care the stories that we teach to our children, remembering that all of our stories have power, that all of our stories are connected, for all of life is one. In the name of all that's sacred for the gathered hearts here today, may it be so.
Put a little love in your heart. Put a little love in your heart. You want the world to know. You won't let hatred grow. Put a little love in your heart. I hope when you decide this will be your guide. Put a little love in your heart. And the world will be a better place. And the world will be a better place for you and me. Just wait.